going to go ahead and hit record just so we get
Oh,
everything here.
yes.
So, hi, I'm Amanda Baudier. I am a spiritual teacher and coach, but I haven't always been a spiritual teacher and coach. Since we are here talking about this topic and we are with Alice, who's an astrologer, I'll just start out by saying I'm a Capricorn with a Virgo rising. So, stepping out of the spiritual closet and owning my spiritual gifts, speaking honestly about how big a role spirituality plays in my life and my work has been a journey that is still unfolding. And we'll get into, a lot of that. But for sure, if there's any earth signs in the room, maybe you understand the desire to both be and appear grounded, which can be challenging when you are also talking about topics that are inherently spiritual and ethereal. So,
I mean, there's no mistake that you and I have kind of like parallel paths in what we've done, because I am a Leo rising and I have a Capricorn moon and a Capricorn rising. So the parts of me that are like, oh, I'm really interested about the spiritual stuff, but also like this is wild. I don't know if anyone's gonna like really relate to this. I really do feel it, and because we recorded a little bit late, I'll just do a quick intro of myself again. My name is Alice, and I'm a career and business astrologer based in Los Angeles. So like I said earlier, I love to start any workshop, any session with a grounding meditation so we can really arrive into the digital space. So, wherever you are, I want you to root down through your sit bones, through your feet, and close your eyes. Start to roll your shoulders back a few times, then forward, then one more time up and down the back. Press the shoulder blades together. Start to notice the quality of your breath. Begin to lengthen your inhales and extend out your exhales. Tune in to how you are feeling today. And we'll begin with 3 cleansing breaths. As you empty the breath out, take a deep breath in through the nose and an audible exhale out through the mouth. Take a deep breath in through the nose and another audible exhale out through the mouth. And one more deep breath in through the nose. Hold it at the top. Can you sip in a little bit more air? And let it go out through the mouth. Seal the lips. Start to breathe in and out through the nose. And feel the breath move through the back of the throat, down the length of the spine, and into the belly. With each inhale, imagine your body expanding like a balloon, and with each exhale, contracting from all directions. We invite you to set an intention for our session today. Allow it to organically come into your consciousness. Our invitation for you is to be open, curious, and most importantly, to have fun, knowing that the message and the insights that we share with you today and that you yourself receive as well are exactly what you need to hear. And if there's anything that Amanda wants to add, I invite Amanda
hmm.
to say something.
Yeah. So my intention for today is that something that Alice shares or something that I shares is a seed planted that can bloom something inside of you in your life, in your career. It is my highest purpose to help other folks believe that exactly what they want to create for their life is possible. And seeing examples of folks who have perhaps had similar journeys is a great way to begin that process. And I'm going to keep it 100. So Alice knows this about me. Um, when we get to the point where it's time to ask questions, ask away. Open books. I would love to uh, I would love to be the person that makes you see something as possible that maybe you didn't believe was possible before joining this little call. So,
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Amanda. So, with that, everyone take a deep breath in through the nose, hold it at the top, and another deep exhale out through the mouth. And as you're ready, gently open your eyes, coming back to the present moment and the present space. All right, welcome back, everyone. If you just joined, please drop into the chat where you are joining from. I love that Summer shared that they're a Cancer Sun, Aquarius Moon, and a Virgo rising. Big year for all my Virgo and Pisces friends. And Amanda, why don't you start off with, how you got here? What were you doing before? What was your life like? You and I are both very different. We have some similar life
yeah.
paths in our 20s.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to give, of course, pretty much every answer we give today will be the condensed version. And I'm always thinking about what pieces of my story could potentially be relevant for you all that are listening. So I went to college in New York City, was from a small town in Maryland, very like average middle class kind of lifestyle, had never been anywhere fancy, had never met anyone cool. And so when I got to New York and got enamored with the nightlife industry, I decided, well, if I do that, that makes me somebody, that makes me cool. And so I started interning for what is now the Tao Group, was just like a little startup back then. And when I was a sophomore at Columbia, I started interning at what became the Marquee nightclub. Worked my way up from intern to managing partner over the course of a very intense decade that also coincided with me needing heart surgery right around my Saturn return at the age of 28 as a result of extreme burnout. So, lots of threads you can pull there. What is interesting is that in the background, I was a dedicated yogi. I was practicing yoga 6 days a week from the time I was 19 years old. I was already a certified yoga teacher. I did that in 2011. And so, the spirituality and the woo-woo stuff was like there was a part of my soul that always knew that it was meant to be doing that when I was doing something very, very different. So the heart surgery was obviously a huge piece of the reason for leaving that industry. At that time, did not have the training or the faith in my own abilities to go off and be an entrepreneur. So I had sort of like two stair step jobs. I was at Sakara Life, which is an organic vegan meal delivery company. So went from, the kind of booze and burger side of hospitality to the more kind of wellness oriented side of hospitality. I was then the GM at a wellness tech startup called Melissa Wood Health. People either know everything about it or have never heard of it. It is an app for fitness and meditation led by an influencer. And then just about 3 years ago, I finally, at the age of, I was 38, got the confidence to flap my wings and start my own business. And that business has evolved pretty much every couple of months since I started it. Started out very much, kind of a mainstream founder coach for entrepreneurs who were experiencing burnout, and has slowly and surely gotten more woo-woo from the time that it started till now. But that's what I'll share for now because we have a lot of other things to talk about in that vein. But that's the gist of my journey. So Alice, I'll kick it over to you.
That Saturn return really hits hard. It's
Yeah.
so I have a podcast in my season 2. I interviewed so many people about their Saturn return, what happened during it, what happened after, and so many people were like, I had a huge health scare. I partially fractured my tailbone.
Mm.
And for those who don't know, your Saturn return happens in your late 20s, early 30s, mid to late 50s, mid to late 80s, and it is such a crucial turning point, a check-in from the universe. It's like, hey, are you where you're supposed to be? If you're not, we're really going to push you there. And you haven't been listening, so we're really going to literally push you to the limit. Um, so I never thought I was gonna work in a space like this. If anything, I thought I was gonna open up a spin studio, a bar studio, maybe. So my background is in communication, specifically PR. I had gone to school, Boston University, to get a degree in comms to work in PR. I thought I was gonna just work through PR my entire life, become an MD, maybe open up my own like PR consultancy. And I spent most of my 20s living in Shanghai, actually. Social media had really taken off around 2008, 2009 when I was still in college, and I was consulting in social media as a college student. And I had an opportunity to go to Shanghai to work at the World's Fair, aka the World Expo. My family's originally from Shanghai as well. And I was like, this is great. Spend time with my family, do something fun. The job market in 2010, 2009 to 2010, like was not a especially great one. And so I went over and then I kind of just stayed for the adventure. People were like, "Oh, you've done social media in the US, that it's really booming here." So I not only witnessed and was a part of the rise of social media in the United States, but also in China as well. So I worked at Hilton, I worked at Publicis, and had a lot of clients like trying to get into the Asian markets, the Chinese market, and everything looked great on paper. Like at age 24, 25, I was like zipping around to like Tokyo for work, for like Paris. Like it was just like very pseudo glamorous. And then as I was inching towards my Saturn return, I was like very much so feeling dead inside. I was like, this is not it. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I went to a good school, I got good grades, I got a good job, like every immigrant parent says that you should do. My parents are Chinese, and so I'm Chinese American first gen. And I really had a crisis, a real existential, like really like multiphasal mental breakdown for my Saturn return. Because I was like, if not this, then what? I like didn't know what to do. And I had moved back to the US like before like my Saturn return. And yeah, I began that process of figuring out what I wanted to do. I explored entrepreneurship, started an e-commerce company, didn't feel like that was the right thing, so left it. And then around 6, 7 years ago, I started this company, Woo Woo Company. It was an events business that covered spiritual topics, holistic wellness in Washington, D.C. I don't know if we talked about this, man. I'm from Maryland.
I mean, I just knew by your area code. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah. And like to start this type of business in 2018, 2019 in Washington, D.C. was a wild
totally.
thing. But I soon learned that people were very interested, and so it's since evolved into me becoming a practitioner. I never thought I was going to lead sound baths, teach yoga, become an astrologer, give readings, like, and it's really blossomed into something like really beautiful. And how many of you have found me is through astrology, because over the last few years I created a website that generates free reports. I do career and business astrology readings, and so here we are today.
Yeah. I mean, one thread I want to pull is the different types of kind of wake up calls that we can have from the universe, right? Which is like either the ones that we sort of step into willingly and get curious and listen to the pings, or when we don't listen to the pings, because the next kind of question we're going into is when did we experience spiritual awakenings? And when Alice first posed the question, it said, "When did we first experience our spiritual awakening?" And for me, and what I believe is that it isn't just one, right? You might have one biggie and then a few littles. For me, I can really think about just the sort of initial curiosities that I had around spirituality and yoga. I mean, the devotion that I had towards yoga, veganism, traveling to Bali, traveling to India. And I mean, this was like 2005 like before social media, before it was cool. Like nobody else was vegan when I was vegan. Nobody was doing yoga. I was like, very kind of counterculture. A part of my soul was always awake, right? A part of me knew. In my 20s, even when I was working in nightlife, I had this vision of being Tara Brach. And for those of you who don't know who she is, like she is a very esteemed Buddhist teacher, right? I'm like throwing parties for Beyonce, secretly wishing I could be Tara Brach, right? It makes no sense. Um, I was I had a lot of personal trauma, a lot of family trauma, came from a lot of scarcity, and so I didn't believe anything like that was possible for me. I had very finite expectations of what I could become or what I could achieve. And so it wasn't even a thought in my mind. I would have never probably left that career path if I hadn't needed heart surgery. And that's just being completely honest. I was bullheaded. I was stubborn. I was, pushing the pedal to the metal and I was achieving results. I was getting paid well. I was very respected, et cetera, et cetera. The universe had to hit me with a brick to get that to happen. Now, the next sort of phase of my spiritual awakening, and I will say, like, I want to caveat this with a trigger warning for anyone who's experienced pregnancy loss. But soon after I transitioned to Sakara, I had a miscarriage in between my two children. And you've heard the term like come to Jesus moment. When that happened to me, it was a type of sadness, a type of grief that I had witnessed in other people, but I had never experienced in myself. And it forced me to go into a deeper level of what I would call not like active healing, but actual surrender, right? Like we hear this word surrender, but people don't know what it means. I was forced into surrender. Like I was in a state of sadness where I'm gonna get emotional thinking about it. I was just laying in the bathtub crying and like listening to sermons. Like I never listened to sermons, right? It was like very out of left field, but I didn't feel like I had the lay force within me to actively heal the way that I had been, like doing my work and doing the things and whatever. I was just like despondent and I had a toddler. And so during that process, I found somatic experiencing, which I'm now a practitioner of. I started doing past life regression and third eye training with one of my spiritual mentors. It was like I was so open at that point to anything that would bring me a little bit of solace that it cracked me open another level. And what I will say is from that point forward, and this is a bold statement, but I stand by it. The universe no longer has to injure me to get me to listen. I just listen. I proactively listen. I am in a constant state of listening and tracking signs and synchronicities because I know what happens when I don't. And so a lot of the guidance that I give people is honing their inner compass, learning how their body, their ancestors, their guides, however they receive communication, like get your antenna ready because that information is coming, right? Like I have a lot of perception of what is coming for me. And now I am so not, I don't want to be like, I'm scared, so I do it so I don't get like another injury or something like that. But I walk into my awakenings with choice instead of as a consequence, if that makes sense. Alice, go ahead and top that, sister.
I mean, a Saturn return brings a lot of a spiritual awakening and can bring also a dark night of the soul, which you hit like a rock bottom and you reach that rock bottom and understand yourself more. You connect with the universe, with God, with Mother Earth, like whatever way like you want to connect. And the reason why like Amanda and I really like felt like now was a really good time to do this workshop is because energetically, like we all know this to a certain degree, and I can give it to you through an astrological lens. Is like this year is a come to Jesus moment, is a spiritual awakening. And you know, spiritual awakenings, like they can come in many shapes and sizes, but time and time again, what I've seen for myself, what you've heard from Amanda, is like there has to be like a moment, like a turning moment. You're injured, you lose a loved one, or like your life just ends up being something that is unexpected. So you receive some grief. You're laid off from a job, like a business that you start like doesn't work out. Like it almost always like coincides with something like that. And it is because when we don't listen to those messages, I'm sure Amanda and I got those messages before I fractured my tailbone, before she had to get heart surgery of like, hey, you should slow down, or this isn't in alignment, or, yes, like there's some like superficial external things that are great about the things that you're doing, but ultimately is not aligned with what your heart wants, what your soul wants, what's really good for the collective and for Earth. And we're all starting to wake up to that even more. This is the year, well, if you're spiritual, you will deepen your spiritual practice. You will refine and hone in on your intuitive abilities and progress them to be psychic abilities. If you're new to this, you're going to start to feel a little bit more comfortable talking about the universe, God, exploring oracle cards, like, tarot, astrology, energy reading, whatever it may be. Like, it is going to affect people in some way, shape, or other. And like the adoption curve for technology, some people they're like early adopters, but most it's in the middle, right? That big bell curve in the middle that'll kind of extrapolate out over the next few years. So a spiritual awakening, yes, there's that like there can be many points throughout your life where it's like a big thing. And then of course there's those like smaller moments where you experience like, oh, like for my business, I've had it for 6, 7 years. It's changed. It's changed a lot because I've changed a lot. And when you are creating a spiritually led business and or a spiritual business, there's just some interesting pivots that'll happen. I literally got the message to create my website, like yoursaturn.com, the one that generates free reports, 3 months after I started to do readings. And I was like, but I'm just starting to do readings. I don't have time to build like a website. Like I'm not I have like a little bit of tech knowledge, but no, this requires resources and knowledge that I don't know a lot. And Amanda and I think it's really important to state because a lot of times in wellness and the spiritual spaces, you see people who are coming from wealthy backgrounds, but they don't tell you. They're blonde, they're blue-eyed. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also didn't come from like a wealthy family. Like I had to go through this like in a very challenging way. My parents were not religious because they grew up in communist China. And so I've really had to come to terms with these things by myself and through reaching out with people in community. And I think that's really, really important to state because a lot of this work, which we're all starting to talk more about, comes from a place of nervous system regulation. And I'm like getting a little ahead of myself. But if you don't feel safe in your body, it's hard for you to trust yourself and your intuition. So I just like wanted to have that bit of like a sidebar that you may be questioning yourself, and that's like normal.
Yeah. One of the questions, which I'll go to next, because you sort of answered it already, which is what does it mean to lead a spiritually led business? And I just want to kind of piggyback on what Alice said, having no idea or, most of your background. The reason why I stated, I started my own business at the age of 38 is because it took me that long, both energetically and financially, to be in a place where I could do that. And I could do that from a place of relative safety, safe enough. Um, Being an entrepreneur is never like, oh, walk in the park. My nervous system loves this. But um, I had to do a lot of work, a lot of healing. I had to get my receipts in terms of the things that I'm trained in and certified in, so that I could go out and start this business with the level of confidence that it requires to be spiritually led, to listen to the pings. Something that Alice and I were talking about before is, I am launching a membership platform in a couple of weeks that will go live in 2026, and and we talked about how much we hate saying this, but it was a full download. It was like I was on a hike, I got the idea, I got the name, I got the price, and the business side of me was like, well, that's not a great idea because that's not a high enough price, and that's that's going to take a while to grow. And anyone that you talk to in the work that I do, there's kind of a set of steps that you follow that allow you to continuously grow your income and allow you to, kind of grow in the way you're meant to. And that felt super out of integrity for me, even though it would be like the better business choice. There's a lot of things that I see in the coaching world that I do not do, that I will never do, even if it could make me money. And I think for me, what does it mean to lead a spiritually led business? Well, sometimes it means making choices that don't make sense on paper, making choices that would not be what like a business book or a very kind of curriculum oriented business coach would tell you to do. Because what I want to do is guided by my understanding of what spirit put me on this planet for and what I feel that the collective needs. If it works and is also lucrative, great. But in the meantime, I'm not throwing out my one-on-one coaching business because I got kids, I got a mortgage, like there is a real, what it means to lead a spiritually led business is to assess the amount of trust that you are capable of giving over to spirit. And for some people, that's all of it, right? I had a client ask me like, well, what are the people that just like throw all caution to the wind and jump off the cliff? What do they have that we don't? And I said, well, one of two things. Either they're just like naturally really wired that way for like risk and whatever, or they have like a trust fund or rich parents or like, you know what I mean?
Uh, yeah, it's risk. Starting a business is risky at any point,
Yeah,
sidebar, but
yeah,
when you know, like, I can fail and lose all this money and get more funding, get more
right.
money because people are just throwing around money, or if I launch something, my friends will like back me. They have 100,000 followers, like each person. I have the right referrals. Like, it's almost like a "Oh, sure, I'll do anything," and you can
Yeah.
fail. You can what's the term? Like you can fail upwards.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I coach people from all different backgrounds. So I know what's in people's like bank accounts, business bank accounts. And some people are really starting from like nothing. And other people are really starting where if their business never makes a dollar, they're fine. And so really understanding that yes, there is a piece of this. Like there is a piece that requires surrender. There's a piece that requires trusting and allowing spirit to lead you and lead your choices. But that is dependent upon either having the actual security, right? Like having some savings, having a partner, having, some your debt paid off or whatever, and also creating the safety in your nervous system, in your body to like step into that fully. And so for me, that was a long journey and process. And I feel like I couldn't have started a spiritually led business and stuck with it in my 20s when I was broke and really stressed out. Like it just like I couldn't have gone from heart surgery at 28 to, oh, now I run a spiritually led business. No, it would have been a shit show. So I just want to state that.
Yeah, and we all create our businesses in different ways. And I remember I did not have the confidence that I needed when I started my business 6, 7 years ago, really, when I look back. But I think that's one of the lessons I'm learning in this lifetime. And so I think the number one thing that I always share with people is like you got to believe in yourself. You have to be confident. Anytime like you get into a bad place, like mentally, emotionally, you have to find a way to get yourself out of it or transmute it into a creative work, like a product or a service or art. Or else you can really get stuck in that spiral. A spiritually led business constantly evolves. And like Amanda said, it requires you to make hard pivots when they come to you because, when you get a creative idea, um, you're not the only one that gets it. And it's whoever is like the most ready in that moment. And there is an endless well of ideas. But what I always ask myself, and this is what I asked myself when, I was like, should I make this website? And, what is it going to look like? I began to think, I'm like, well, I got this message and I know that other people need this. That's why I got this message. How would I feel if I saw someone make something similar to this? And I was like, but for better or for worse, my ego was like, oh, I'd be pissed that I didn't listen to my intuition again. And so I did it. I did it. And like Amanda said, there's a process that you do things, you're supposed to, before you automate anything, you gotta make sure that you have the demand for it. I was just like, I think people are gonna like these free reports. I'm gonna put the money in. It's kind of like, if I build it, will they come? Like, they did end up coming, and it really is exactly what my intuition has told me. And interestingly enough, these things, like a spiritual awakening, doesn't always happen when it's your Saturn return. It can happen like in a lot of different ways from an astrological perspective. But there's another big milestone that's called a nodal return. A Saturn return is really about learning what it means to be on the right path. It's like a major maturation period of time for a couple years. A nodal return happens around 36, 37, which is about embodiment of the person that you're meant to be. And so you may find yourself also experiencing some of this, and it makes sense, the timing of it, Amanda, that you started your business at 38 because you're just like, I'm going to embody like my higher self. I'm going to, do the thing that I've always felt like doing instead of kind of running around, running away from my problems, or kind of being like, oh, if I move somewhere else, if I like, that it'll get resolved, and to really double down on creating like local community. I wouldn't be surprised if that was also the time in and around that time that you moved to where you live now.
Yeah, yeah. Um, speaking of that embodiment, speaking of what you said about you got to believe in yourself. I am a student and a practitioner of many different tools and modalities, everything from executive coaching to yoga therapy to somatic experiencing to shamanic practices. Like everything I do takes a multi-pronged approach. I think because my own limiting beliefs, my own self-doubt was so all-encompassing that it required, like, it wasn't just like, oh, I found this one tool and it fixed me. No, I needed like the full court press. And so something that I have been talking about a lot with my clients lately is the coming into confidence, really developing an embodied sense of self-worth, which requires so much in a society that seeks to make us feel small compared to other people. We're judged when we're, too cringe or whatever. I mean, there's just so much that would want you to, keep yourself small and keep yourself contained. And so I will often think about, particularly if you are spiritually led already, if you are trying to develop a spiritual business, it's like this is an agreement between you and your creator, right? Like there is no one else's opinion that really matters because I'll use the term God. I know that it's not the way that everybody thinks about this, but God created you with the desire for you to fulfill your highest potential of that creation, whatever that looks like. I sometimes imagine like that God is like a soccer mom or a dance mom, right? Being like, like God is cheering for you on the sidelines, watching you try and fail and get up again and believe in yourself and brush off the dirt, right? Clean the bruises. This, for me, is something that no one can take away from me because, yeah, there's going to be haters. Yeah, there's going to be people who succeed quicker than me. There's going to be people who maybe are prettier than me or younger than me or richer than me or have the investment capital or da 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 da. But my contract with God, you can't say shit about that, right? Because that is unseverable. It is so sacred, and I believe in it so wholeheartedly. There is no amount of like negativity or judgment or hate or even self-doubt that could come in between my relationship with God and my belief that we're all put here to shine and to really step into the fullness of ourselves. Um, yeah.
That was so beautiful. Thank you.
Sometimes people get triggered when I start saying the big G word, but it is
I mean, this is the year. This is the
this is
year. I grew up not comfortable with religion. Like, I felt like it was culty. And really, the last few years, especially this year, I'm like, I think I'm a little bit more comfortable with God, and trying to understand like my relationship with it, how I feel. Like I'm moving through it now. I'll be honest, I'm going through another spiritual awakening. I mean,
Mhm,
it's my nodal return too, FYI, because the North Node is in Pisces, and I'm exploring more around my intuition, around faith, around spirituality,
mhm,
like many of us are. And if you also have a North Node in Pisces, it'll hit you like a lot more. But yeah, I think this is like an important session for us to hold so we can talk about, the universe, God, and how a lot of people, there are some people who have never been spiritual. They're going to be spiritual. People who've been spiritual, they're like, I'm going to leave all this stuff behind, and I'm all about God and Jesus. Like I've seen it already happen. And,
mhm,
I want people to know that it's really just about what's right for you. It's got to feel right from within. And don't be afraid to let go of something that worked for you before that feels no longer right, because life is just always about putting one foot in front of the other, taking one step upwards or sideways or whatever it may be. And the more we're able to just allow ourselves to be guided by that internal compass, and of course, you got to feel safe in your body for it to really come through. But honestly, I've been doing this work, and I've Amanda started her business feeling more confident and more like well resourced and equipped. I started this business like really, I feel like a hot mess to a certain degree. Like there were moments I felt like really confident, moments I don't feel really confident. And, whatever we all go through is merely a way for us to better teach and equip others. And I know that's part of my journey, like to understand like viscerally what it means to go from feast and famine of like, oh, I'm doing so well, oh, I'm not doing so well. And honestly, 100% of the time, 100% of the time, it's always related to how much I believe in myself, how I'm feeling, and how much I can really push myself forward, being like, this is the path, trust in it. You got low views, or like you don't have a lot of signups, or like it's a slow sales month, like to always hold faith and trust that things can change for you in the next hour, the next day. Like miracles happen all the time and things are working for you always.
I want to ask, because obviously we're talking in this hour before we move on to questions from you all, just about how it was for you coming out of the spiritual closet, so to speak. Like when you first went from comms to woo woo co. Like, did you get a lot of eyebrows looking at you? Were your parents like, "What the heck?"
Oh my
Because they
God,
were, you know.
I was terrible to myself. I was like so stressed. I was like, what are people gonna think? First of all, I moved back home from Shanghai. I was like kind of living like a what was on paper like such a glamorous like great life. Maybe I was the only one that was thinking that because we're always like thinking about ourselves more than what everyone else is thinking. I literally moved back home. I moved back home to like my dad's house in the suburbs, like started a business, and then a couple years later I was like, I didn't really like that business, didn't really work out as well as I thought it would, but honestly I didn't think that it was going to be something I would stay long in anyways. My intuition was already working at that point. She was online. And I had a lot of doubts. I was like, I still knew a lot of people from high school, from college, that like lived in the area. It's a generally serious town. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome. And then, once I started to host the events and saw people were like super interested, so one, the idea was validated. And then two, I knew more than other people. And like just in tarot, there's like the novice, there's a lot of power in being the novice. And from a business and tech perspective, the disruptors of any industry never come from that industry.
Mm,
They
yeah.
never do. So I don't know why they always make us feel, especially women feel like, oh, you got to know exactly what to do. And that's a big thing when it comes to women. We always feel like we need to know the 10 steps, the 5-year plan, when all we need to know is just like, what's the next step? What should I do today, this week, this month? And I went through a lot of that. My parents were kind of like, they didn't understand what I did before, like digital media, like you work from home, like you do stuff on the internet. So moving into this space, my mom was like, "You believe in all of this stuff?" But she was like, my mom's like, my parents are pretty chill compared to other immigrant parents. They just like let me do my thing. They're like, as long as you're paying the bills. And these days was so healing. Like my mom told me like a year or two ago, she's like, you work really hard. She's like, you work really, really hard. Like, take a break if you need to. Like, and honestly, like I did, I took a break. I did some freelancing marketing work as I was building like Saturn up to really re-regulate my nervous system. And it really did a lot for me. It really, really did. And I feel like that's very important to share because some of us will go in and out of entrepreneurship and maybe freelance or maybe working for someone else, but it doesn't mean you're giving up on your dream. And I really had to talk myself through that last year. Well,
Yeah.
the year before.
Yeah, I will say for me, when it comes to coming out of the woo closet, like I did it so slowly. The whole time that I was working at Tao, like people knew that I like did yoga and was a vegan, but I had like a Finsta where I posted my like spiritual quotes, like I wish, man, if I had really started hitting like spiritual social media hard back in the day, I would have like I probably would have a massive account now because I was like very ahead of my time, but I was terrified.
Absolutely.
I'm like, well, whatever. Everything happens when it's meant to. But there was kind of two things that held me back, and I'm going to share them because they might be relevant for you. One was I was really worried that my credibility was going to go out the window because I have a good degree, right? I had a, successful business career. All of a sudden, like, oh, now you're like a whatever, like a, spiritual chick, right? Like I was really afraid that all that I had built and my credibility in the business world would go out the window by like stepping into my spirituality. So that was fear number one. Um, the other fear was who am I to like, I'm just this girl from a, middle class family in the suburbs of Maryland. Who am I to be like, I had spiritual teachers on such a pedestal. And so what was really interesting was as I got to work in the wellness and spiritual space, very tangential to people with like best-selling books, huge platforms, I was like, oh, okay, like people aren't necessarily who they, seem to be on the internet and in their books and whatnot. And like I take I have so much reverence for the work that I do as a spiritual teacher. I hold it with so much integrity and I'm very trained and I'm very principled and I deeply care. And I was like, you know what? I can put this sort of imposter syndrome, this smallness, this lack of aside because I know that what I want to do matters and will make a difference with people. But like that was more of like a personal development process, whereas the other fear was something I just kind of had to like hope for the best because for sure there were people who did. I remember I got a comment on one of my Instagram videos. It was like, wow, you went to Columbia and now you do this? What a waste. I can laugh about it now, but like people are going to judge. Like all the things that you're afraid of happening, like probably might happen, but they shouldn't stop you and they shouldn't matter as much as we make them up in our heads.
Honestly, I never answered that part of your question. Nobody said anything.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything. I
Yeah.
don't really feel like I got any comments on social media. People who came were like super grateful for the events. If anything, like I had a boyfriend at the time, when I launched this business, and he was just like, why do you believe in astrology? Like, this is not a thing. Like, he was the one that wasn't like as supportive, but I really think that at that time he was just going through his own kind of like scarcity and things and saw it
Mhm.
reflected in me.
Yeah.
But I think that was like honestly, that was the only quote unquote like bad feedback I had was like someone close to me.
Yeah. And I also think like the spiritual coaching business overall is a racket. And there's a lot of like very sketchy sketchball people within that community, maybe more so than astrology, because astrology is a science versus like, I just, whatever.
It's
Not gonna
it's
say
it's
more.
it's it's a lot. I mean, especially in Los Angeles, from moving from the DC area to LA, you think you're like, wow, everything is gonna be so good and blah blah blah, but it's about over here, there's a lot of quantity, not
Yeah.
as much quality.
Ew.
Which I
Right.
have learned, which is like really, really interesting. And again, if you're like seeking somebody to work with or even just like to read their content, consume their content, like your body always knows. Does this person make you feel expansive? Or does this person make you feel like worried or anxious or shrinking? And that's a really good kind of like measurement of if this is someone's content that you should be absorbing and someone you should be working with. And I think we've got like 10, 12 minutes left, so why don't we take some questions?
Yeah, totally. And it would be great. People, you can just come off mute, or if you feel more comfortable, you can drop it in the chat if you have a question for us. And oh, yeah.
No
Can people unmute
questions?
themselves? Can people?
Yeah, I think they can, and they can raise their
Okay.
hand too if it's not
Okay.
not working. Do people want to raise their hand so we can call on them? Maybe nobody has any questions. They're just taking in all the information, or there's like a bit of a lag. Is there anything else you wanted to share, Amanda?
I'm looking at what Jocelyn commented, which that she works on the ops side, and it's hard to decipher who's truly spiritual. Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing, and I think that it holds people back because you're afraid that you'll be lumped in people who don't necessarily align with your views, and I think that is even more of a reason to come out of the spiritual closet and share, because there is a lot of people that are doing it because it's a good business, because it's popular, right? Because it is trending, right? When I first started in spirituality, it was not popular. Then it became very popular and very trendy. And so a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. My hope is that a lot of those folks uh, especially with everything going on in the world, right? I led a workshop on grief with my shamanic teacher on Sunday, and one of the things he and I were talking about was a lot of the very famous popular spiritual teachers, they don't have the depth to talk about climate change or grief work or these like very like intense and perhaps divisive topics because they have their shtick, right? And so those of us that feel like no, like we have something to say and we're like, we are in integrity with what we came here to do. Like, I hope that if any of you in this room, if that resonates with you, to please like step forward. Researchers and our okay, oh gosh. Um, Resources for those of us starting a spiritual learning journey. I mean, the Untethered Soul is number one that I always recommend to everybody. Untethered Soul is phenomenal. Um,
I love
Sarah,
The Alchemist.
oh yeah, I love The Alchemist. Sarah, I'm curious if you'd be open to sharing what area of spiritual learning are you most interested in? Because that it's such a vast topic, and yeah, I could go in on lots of different resources.
So that's kind of, I'm just initially starting my spiritual journey, learning just more about what's out there. I feel like I'm drawn spiritually and I have certain gifts. I'm just trying to figure out what those are, or what are the possibilities.
Yeah, if you're thinking about your spiritual gifts, I would definitely recommend looking up Carolyn Miss, Myss, Caroline Miss. She has a lot of different books in the and she talks a lot about her own path to becoming like a healer and a teacher and a channel. But written in a very like a lot of the old school spiritual teachers actually are very like down to earth in the way that they write and the way that they communicate versus a lot of the people that are like more like new popular that are like, I talk to aliens and whatever.
It's a lot.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Caroline Miss would be a great place to start if you are thinking about what are my gifts and how do I tap into them.
There's this book that I read time and time again when I feel a little bit like lost. And I'm trying to remember it right now, but it is I'll email it to everyone with the recording, but it basically it's like this like doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, like he does like past life regressions on people, and you begin to see like all the past lives that people have had. It's you know it, I'm
Oh,
sure you do.
yeah, Many Lives, Many Masters.
Not that one. I think it's the
Okay.
same author, but the cover is like blue and like sparkly.
Okay. Hmm. There's
I'll remember it and I'll send it in the email.
Yeah, I have when people come to my house, I have like five bookshelves full of esoteric books, everything from witchcraft to divination to like trauma healing. It's just like I've got it all. So the more specific the better. Also, this is like kind of a book that not a lot of people talk about, but the woman who's the founder of the Omega Institute, Elizabeth Lesser,
Oh.
wrote two books. One is called A Path with Heart that talks about her own journey to be from being like she was actually like in a cult in her 20s, like kind of crazy story, had babies, like whatever. A Path with Heart is her spiritual journey that also encompasses teachings from some of the great spiritual masters who have taught at Omega Institute. So that's a really great book. She also wrote another book called Broken Open that's about when she cheated on her husband, which is a phenomenal book that like makes you feel very like validated in your humanness. Yeah, I could talk about spiritual books all day.
And
A
then
Return
we
to
have s-
Love.
Oh yeah, and then we have some of like the older things, like the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching.
Hmm.
Those are like ancient Indian and Chinese texts, and honestly, like anytime I read those things, it's all the same thing
Hmm.
over and over again. Like each book, like any podcast, we're just talking about the same thing, and ultimately is to be heart-centered and heart-led and knowing that you're not alone. That's basically that's basically it.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm anybody have a business question? Anybody here a spiritual entrepreneur that wants to like shoot your shot and get some free advice? We charge a lot for this stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
It's nice because there's both of us.
Yeah,
coming from
totally.
like our different perspectives, but like
Yeah.
I think we're a beautiful like Venn diagram of things.
Oh,
While we wait
hey,
for
I
question,
I I
oh,
have a
go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Melanie from New Jersey. Not really a
Hi.
business question, but kind of following up on what Sarah was talking about, being kind of new to woo-woo a little bit and kind of exploring everything. I love this idea. Both of you were talking about like getting these downloads from the universe. And I'm sure like the universe is probably telling me things all day long that I'm just like too dense to receive. What are some good ways to kind of open up oneself to kind of receiving these messages?
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to really fetishize people that like got intuitive hits. I was like, oh, they're so cool. I want to be like them, and didn't think that I was or that I could be. Um, the two things that I would recommend that are very practical and tactical, one is everybody's probably heard of morning pages. Morning pages is typically about like reawakening your creativity. But it's part of the book, The Artist's Way. And it's basically the practice of doing 3 pages of free-form journaling every morning, right when you wake up. Spirit needs some place to come into. So when you're busy, when there's lots of distraction, when there's lots of noise, spirit will not be able to come into your space. So the free-form journaling, whether it's reawakening creativity, intuition, etc., it's very, very helpful. The other thing is anyone that I know who's done any amount of spiritual work will say you get the most intuitive hits during Vipassana, which is silent meditation retreat. So silence. When I get my downloads when I go on hikes, because that is when I'm alone in nature. It's silent. I have no phone in my hand, right? It's just me and silence. So you need space. If you give spirit space and you say, fill me with what I need to know, it will come. But the space has to be created.
Yes, and I get a lot of great downloads when I'm washing the dishes, when I'm in the shower, when I'm folding laundry. Like when you do something that's a rote activity, it kind of just like makes your body feel safe. And and then things start to expand. I also get a lot of downloads from driving because I know some of you might be really busy, you have children and maybe really young children, and you're just like, oh, I don't know, like starting something new can feel like really daunting. But those moments have been really helpful. And like Amanda said, you need to make the space for it. And carving out time for meditation, journaling, or just spending time outside is just so crucial. Tending to a garden, but just anytime you can reconnect with your body is going to really helpful. And as well as breath work. If you are someone who deeply feels and kind of almost like you have like 10 antennas up, you're just picking up on too many signals, the breath work will kind of drop away the things that, aren't yours and allow you to kind of be a little bit more focused. I know that Yenny has a question. So, Yenny, would you like to come off mute?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having this space. Yes, I'm Uni, and I'm also, I think I'm in a very early journey of figuring out what my soul wants. So I've been in the corporate world for such a long time, and this time I just felt a really strong urge that I need to take a break. So right now I am taking a break, which was a big step for me. But now a lot of practical questions or logical mind is talking to me quite a bit. So for example, like, oh, I don't have my exact next step. I don't know. My logical mind can come up with it because I've been in a software engineering world for a long time, and that's the only world that I've been known and getting promoted. So I'm like, oh, you got to go back. You will not be able to make that amount of money anywhere else. That's number one. So while you guys were sharing the story, I could really resonate. And it's weirdly, this question is around this one particularly, is that my corporate has been covering all the health insurance and all the insurance aspect. And so very embarrassing to acknowledge this, but I realize one of the reasons that I am scared to leave is because of the safety net regarding this health insurance and all the whatever the insurance that they were covering. So my questions for you, both Alice and Amanda, if you don't mind sharing, How did you navigate this part? Like you can just narrow down to health insurance perspective. I just want to hear about the options. I'm married, so I do have partner as well, so that can be the one option too. But just I'm curious so that I can kind of calm down my logical mind because surprisingly, it's just keep hanging on to it, that aspect. Like, hey, you are not gonna be safe. You don't have HSA or whatever once you leave and you're alone and you don't know what you're doing, kind of thing. Yeah, that's all. But thank you.
Alice, you want to take
I mean, this
it?
is something I thought about for myself. Like people constantly ask me, and like one, it's like when you stay at a job that does everything, but is slowly killing you inside, that affects your health. Like it really, really does. And then two, because you have a partner, you can always join like their health insurance. Three, at all states, you'll be able to get some sort of like low, like what, depending on how much money you make. And if you have like Cobra and all of that, like you can join like Medicaid. It's like, I know that it's like not ideal, especially like there's a lot of stigma around it, but it is really helpful when you're not making any income and you can just be on Medicaid. But also I think it's just really important to understand like how much healthier you will be when you're not in a job that is just misaligned. Like that's really important. So there's a bit of the practical in there and kind of more of like, like emotional stuff around it. Amanda, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I have a husband. I have two children. My husband's an entrepreneur. We pay a shit ton of money every month for private insurance, and it sucks. But what I will say is, it is a business expense, so at least it's going
Yes.
against the taxes that I am paying. The other thing I will say is, and this kind of gets into, there was a question in the chat around offering woo product or service and still be working hardcore corporate jobs, moving from serving the general public to like moving into spirituality. The way that I did this, which is different than what Alice did, is that I really took baby steps. I'm telling you, when I left my full-time job where I had health insurance, a six-figure, salary, like benefits, vacation, all the things, I didn't leave that job and launch my coaching practice until I also had a couple of consulting clients locked in because, once again, kids, mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. So I went from like 100% safety net to like 40% safety net. And then it was really just like a year and a half ago that I got rid of all my consulting clients and focused
Mm-hmm.
just on coaching clients. And it is only now that I'm saying, I am full-fledged. I'm starting a spiritual community. It's not about business. It's not about entrepreneurship. So like it was like I didn't go from 100% I'm in the safety net to like now I have zero because that wasn't reality. Like I have children, I have like whatever. And I also have a very sensitive nervous system. My nervous system could not go from 100 to zero. I went from 100 to 50 to 30 and now I'm like, okay. But, with a lot of time and also building up my income. Like I make good money, but it wouldn't have started. I couldn't have made up my old salary doing spiritual coaching day one. I had business development consulting clients. I had, like sales biz dev consult, right? Right. So like thinking about it that you don't have to go from 100 to zero, zero to 100, you can make those stair steps that are um responsible and like respectful of 3D reality while like starting to tiptoe into the 5D, even though I don't really ascribe to the
Yeah.
whole 5D 3D thing, but you know what I mean.
I always recommend this to my clients because anytime I've like switched from one job to the next, I've always just quit. And then just like I don't know, I know it's part of my astrology, so I know this like now, but before I was just like it's very unlike someone like me to who really likes like stability and is risk adverse to just like be like I quit and then find something else. And I jumped into entrepreneurship literally with like 2 feet. And I think that that's just something that I needed to learn. I was like I had come back to the US and I was like kind of facing like, do I take this chief of staff job at this like agency or do I do my own thing? And I knew for myself, if I'd gone, I've been, I was like so long ago, 6, 7 years ago, I'd been making like six figures. I wouldn't have not been able to leave. I just
Mhm.
couldn't have done like this company, the events portion, like I knew myself. And that my intuition, that was my intuition guiding me. And it's taken me quite a bit of time to really regulate my nervous system
Yeah.
because like that's really, really important. And like obviously this is not something I recommend because it was a lot on my nervous system, but for me, it was something I had to learn.
Well, we took up every second of time and could keep going. I'll drop my email in the chat if people have questions. Like for real, you can reach out to me and email me. Um, and Alice, anything that you want to share, promote, talk about, what's going on with you, girl?
I also dropped my email there, alice@yoursaturn.com. So if you want your free career astrology report, you can go to yoursaturn.com. I do readings, written reports, corporate team building. I do coaching from time to time as well. But if you're interested, just email me one-on-one because I don't put that up on like my website. And you can find me on Instagram as well at WOOWOOCO, so Woo Woo Co. And I know that Amanda has a really exciting like membership coming up. So if you want to drop like, oh, you already dropped like the link.
Yeah,
Great.
so I do one-on-one coaching specifically for startup founders. That is my, current business, and it is a very beautiful blend of spiritual and very tactical entrepreneurship coaching. And then my membership community, our Instagram page will go live in like on the fall equinox, of course, because when else do witches put Instagram pages live? But for now, you can go to the website and just sign up to get alerts. And it was such an honor having you all here today talking about such a fun topic.
Yes, thank you everyone for taking the time to attend our session. We'll send a replay out as well as some information again about both of us and some resources as well. And feel free to email us or message us on Instagram. We covered a lot and really recommend that you kind of come back to this recording over the next few months because we're about to hit eclipse season in September, which brings in a lot of change and transformation. I know, Amanda, you've been, feeling that too.
Feel
uh,
it
and,
all.
and so this was really something that we felt was going to be supportive as many of us make transitions and decisions on how we want to lead, live, and work.
Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day and week.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
That was great.
Thank
Bye.
Bye.
you.
Bye.